Good afternoon. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Thanks to Vosh Bodie, our new showrunner, director, producer for the wonderful beginning intro. Look for more changes, more upgrades in our program as we proceed. Thank you, Vosh, for that work. I want to start off to say that today, Thursday, July 14th, 2022, our Thursday program generally involves the group I call the Companions. That was in the title. And the Companions are friends of mine, people that I've known for a long, long time who get together with unscripted conversations. We greet each other and say, hey, what's on your mind? And we talk about ourselves and our families, our communities, and our world. We talk about what we want to bring into the world, what in retrospect we have done, and what looking forward we can do to build that which we believe ought to be for ourselves, our families, for our community, and for humanity. Let me begin, as I always do, welcoming and thanking my writing partner, Brenda Lyle-Gray. Brenda Lyle-Gray joins us every week from New Mexico. Brenda, how you doing?
I'm fine. Glad to be here.
Well, Brenda, just so you know, background-wise, and I were in kindergarten together in Kansas City, Missouri. And that's what companionship really means when you've got a 75-year history with someone. We connected recently in the past, 2 years now, with you coming on board for the show. Well, in that same spirit, two other of my regular companions are here. Kamau King. Kamau King came to Brenda's and my school in third grade. Kamau King joins the program from Atlanta, Georgia. He's the retired corporate counsel, a lawyer for Coca-Cola. Worked running, I think, Coca-Cola West Africa for some period of time. Kamau, how you doing, my friend?
Doing fine, Al. Good to be here. Good to see you both. Hey, Brand.
Hi, good my revolutionary friend.
Good to see you too. Yusef Mgeni is here, and Yusef and I go back for as long as I've been in Twin Cities. He's from here. He's a native and has the book on everybody and everything. Yusef is one of the wise ones, just a person whose memory and recall are encyclopedic and whose integrity is impeccable. He brings fire and honesty and clarity and a critical thought to all of our discussions. And Yusef, good to see you, brother. How you doing, man?
Fine, thank you. I want to know how Brenda could be in the first grade with the two of you when she looks so much younger.
Uh-oh.
That's what I told you about Yusef. There we go. Here we go.
Good afternoon. Good
That's my mentor, Kamau. I go to him, and then I have a 40-year-old mentor, Sean Lewis, and so they're because I'm writing, about a city I've never visited. So encyclopedias. It's
Brenda,
great.
I sent you a note probably at 3 a.m. Commending you for the story you did for Monday's paper. And it's the report you wrote on last Monday's, I think, or Monday's conversation with the candidate for Hennepin County Attorney, Mary Moriarty. When you read that, when it comes out today and tomorrow, you'll enjoy reading it. A good report, a good story. Brenda, job well done. Important, critical information where we ask tough questions of people about their mission, their work, their duty, and they're willing to be accountable for both the changes that we need and seek, but also the failings that we've experienced in community and in society. And we look hard at the question of white supremacy. White supremacist thought, the impact on Black people, and our desire, our need to dismantle it and to replace it with systems that reflect and honor our dignity, our humanity, and what we believe we can bring for the benefit of all humankind. In that spirit, I'm pleased to bring in Dr. Dolores Henderson, who is
my first grade teacher.
There we go. That's the beauty of connection. Dr. Dolores Henderson in St. Paul, a former teacher, principal, a district official, and now leading an initiative that we know as Dolores Works. And Dr. Henderson, good afternoon. Good to see you again.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. And I see my great friend, Yusef and Mgeni. I had his daughter in the Gifted and Talented Magnet. He was the most supportive parent, friend that anyone would ever want in education.
It was easy working with you, Dr. Henderson.
And I love him dearly, as well as his family. But we need Yusef again to get out there and bring in our parents and our community to say, we need to work together. So Dolores Works, and I'd like to bring Dr. Stephen Yunoski in, the
Sure.
superintendent of Richfield, who is a partner with Dolores Works, who is outstanding as an educator. When we were colleagues together in St. Paul, we both saw the worth of families, Yusef. We both saw the worth of our children. Yeah. And you talk about equity and inclusion. And now we did that, the two of us years ago. And that's why I'm in Richfield. But Dolores Works is really developing our students, empowering our students with their voices, leveraging their education, looking at the skill levels that they need, as well as looking into the future for economic sustainability, that they're able to use the skills that we're teaching them now and be able to move forward in the future to deal with closing the wealth gap. And that's what we're doing out here with Richfield, with such a dynamic leader as Dr. Stephen Yunoski. And it has made a difference with our children being out here, as well as Al McFarlane, your great daughter, teaching creative writing and really working with us with communication. Batala McFarlane has been excellent in this program. But I'd like for you to hear from Steve Yunoski how this partnership has really made a difference with staff and with our children. So I'd like for you to hear from Dr. Steve Yunoski. Sure. And let him bring in a little introduction on himself. Dr.
Sure.
Yunoski.
Before I do that, Steve, thank you for being here. I want to acknowledge notes from friends of yours and mine. Bill Woodson is joining us from Sarasota, Florida, and saying hello. Thank you, Bill. And Ota Michael, who works with me as an editor, is joining from Nigeria. And Ota, thank you so much for being a part of the program, recognizing also Vera Porteous, who is monitoring the program. So thank all of you. You know, what we want you to do is let your networks know. Share with your friends and people that you are connected to that this conversation is happening right now. We do this every day. And our objective is to connect us, to elevate our voices, our vision, and to, in a sense, create a new public mind, a public mind that says we can, we will, we shall, we must. Well, with that, let me bring in Dr. Stephen Yunoski. Dr. Yunoski, thank you for being here. Thank you for your work at Richfield. I'm going to have you sort of set the stage for the conversation and give us a background on both demographics in Richfield, the changes those demographics reflect, and the challenges that educators and that institutions face right now, and how partnership, collaboration, innovation point to a future that we can all be proud of and all benefit from. Steve, good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to be in this esteemed group. Richfield Public Schools, we're a first-tier suburb serving 72% students of color. We are one of the most diverse staffs in the state at 24% staff of color. So first off, let's just think about that, right? We know that educators of color and Black educators do better work with students and students of color, and at 24% with a gigantic gap between the 72% students of color, that already makes us one of the most diverse diverse districts in the state, which points to the need of Minnesota to do a better job preparing educators. Because for those of you who don't see on screen, I am the white person in this group, and educators in Minnesota invariably look like me. And that just doesn't do well for all of our kids. We need to represent our students more effectively. We also need to think about the holistic child. So a lot of the things we've talked about in school are about how hard it has been since COVID arrived over the last few years, and the mental health and the needs of our children and the needs of our community. But as I think about your introduction, Al, schools have been bad to people of color forever. And so while there are extra challenges we're acknowledging now, schools have never served marginalized kids, have never served students of color well, and we really need to look at doing things differently. And so rather than add programming and add supports with people who look like me, we're adding supports with esteemed elders of our community like Dr. Henderson, your daughter being on the team, and then just bringing in members of the community who know how to serve our students more effectively. And so what we have done with Dolores Works and expanding our time with our students is paired academics and enrichment with both our staff and for Dolores Works staff doing both of those components. Really making sure that our kids are being connected to our schools more effectively, connected to learning opportunities more effectively, and really being connected to staff who look much more like them, because the Dolores Works team, I would say, is more like 95% staff of color.
Right.
Whereas again, Richfield Public Schools, 24%. And so as you can see, we're able to partner with esteemed members of the community who bring in things that we actually just can't provide. And again, historically have not provided well in the public school systems, not just in Minnesota, but nationwide.
Steve, this is Yusef Mgeni. It's good to see you again. And the one comment I want to add to your introduction is that the work that you are doing with Dolores Works and students of color is not being done at the expense of the white students in the Richfield School District or the other students of color. And in fact, they benefit from it, as do the majority of your staff members who are white, because it makes the students, the families, better instruments for learning and for living together, not just now, but throughout life. So it's mutually beneficial to address the needs of marginalized students within the educational setting. And I want to congratulate you for what you and Dr. Henderson are doing in the Richfield School District. Thank you very much.
Dr. Henderson, why don't you and Judy Henderson give us the Dolores Works 101? Take a minute, step back, and explain to our viewers and listeners the mission, the vision, how this organization, this work came into being, and what the aims are, what the goals are, and what the metrics are. How do you measure your success?
As an administrator in St. Paul, I saw the needs of our children and that they were not really being given the opportunity to close the achievement gap as well as the opportunity gap. And so the mission is to close the achievement and opportunity gap for all children, but especially children of color, with the emphasis on African Americans and African descendants and underrepresented children. So that's the mission of Dolores Works. The vision was to bring in retired educators as well as community experts to help our children achieve to their highest potential, And that's what we have done. Gary Hines is the artist in residency for Dolores Works. And I want to thank Dr. Yanowski for giving Dr. Hines that opportunity to be the artist in residency in Richfield. He did it last summer, he did it after school, and now he's doing it this summer. And I was sitting in his class this morning, as I do so often since we've started summer school, and he was teaching the song that he produced for the nation, Juneteenth. And the children were so into it. And question him about the future. And I thought, what a learning experience for all of these children. And these were second graders. So we work with first through fifth graders. They're going into second, going into third, going into fourth, and going into fifth. And it was amazing how they really questioned him about the future. The other experts that I brought in from Tim Page, who works with the University of Minnesota Extension Program and works with our first and second, third, and fourth graders in gardening. And what an asset for these children dealing with gardening with Tim Page. I brought in some other experts of teenagers, and this is where I think we come in. I have college students, and some of you might know Tracy Bransford. Her son is going to Howard this year, and I watched them with T-ball. They're teaching T-ball to our students this summer, and Don Francis, which you might know, Dr. Yunoski, is Donna McIntosh's grandson, and he's a junior at LSU. And then I brought in other high school students to work with our children, and I brought in a soccer coach who is European American from Burnsville. We have Patala McFarlane teaching creative writing. I have 2 certified teachers teaching science and technology. I have 2 teachers from Richfield teaching flag football, as well as teaching children other movements. And I have an outstanding art teacher from Richfield. But I also have and I thought I could play tennis until this expert came in with Dolores Works this summer and is teaching tennis. And she goes to Indiana University. So look at the diversity in youth love youth. That's what I'm beginning to find out this summer. But I also have some Hispanic women teaching gardening and the language. The assistant superintendent, Dr. Latanya Daniels, was with me before we had the break, and we were in music class, and there was a young man, a student who refused to take off his hoodie. So she went over and sat beside him and talked to him. He did not take off the hoodie, so I went over and talked to him, and he removed the entire jacket. But then when I removed from him, he put it back on. I went to my Hispanic community expert who's teaching gardening, and I said, maybe you should speak with him. I don't know what she said, but whatever she said, it worked. He took the jacket off, he took the hoodie off, and Dr. Hines said, I need someone to volunteer to sing a solo. His hand was the first hand that went up.
Wow.
And Dr. Daniels said, I can't believe it. I said, 3 things happened with that student. 1, it was an elder speaking to him. 2, she made a connection with him. And 3, it was a language. So we need all of that in working with our students. I think, Yusef, we always said when we work together, it's about community, it's about family, and it's about respect. And that's what we have to bring back with our youth, respecting their elders, making that connection, and speaking their language. So I'm finding with my program coordinator, Mrs. Judy Henderson, who's also a certified teacher, coming from Burnsville as well as St. Paul. I'd like for Dr. Yunoski to introduce his director. And thank you, Dr. Yunoski, for taking the recommendation from me to add a director of extended learning in Richfield. It has tremendously made an impact on Dolores Works with connecting with our students and the staff. I can't say enough about Richfield staff. I think there's no comparison with last summer and this summer. The staff is friendlier. The staff is talking to each other. We're building a relationship. And when you talk about community, Mr. McFarlane, that's what it's about. Us getting to know each other and seeing what we bring to the table as a group of human beings, not looking so much at race, but beginning to work on relationships. I was just talking to one of your staff members, Dr. Yunowski, and said we were on the same plane going to the UK, going to London before the pandemic. And that's how our conversation started about Dolores Works. So I like for Dr. Yunowski to introduce this outstanding young director that he's put in place to work with partnerships, especially Dolores Works Inc. Jonathan, and my program director, Judy Henderson. I think the two of them have been just outstanding in bringing all of us together and trying to keep Dr. Yunowski and me on task. So maybe.
Steve, go ahead and introduce them. Bring them on, Steve.
All right, so we have been partnering up Jonathan Heyer and Judy Henderson, who are our site level leads. One of the amazing things the federal government has done with COVID is provide dollars to school systems over the next 2 years for extended time and extended opportunities. And so one of the things that this program can pressure or communicate out there are dollars for extended opportunities for kids and extended opportunities like Dolores Works. And so what we've done is partner with Dolores Works, and so we can bring on Judy Henderson, and also working with Jonathan Heyer, who is on our site, helping coordinate all those extended time programs to make sure.
Steve, are you talking about ARP funding?
Yes.
Excellent
correct.
use for it. Excellent use.
Thank you, sir.
What did you call it, Yusef? What's the acronym?
The American Rescue Plan, the
I
COVID
got it.
funding.
Okay, sure. And so Jonathan and Judy Henderson, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you, and just to be a part of this group and to be talking about these important topics. And I just want to piggyback off of Dr. Henderson and talking about the community building that we've been able to do with the staff. One of the missions that we had for this summer was to help students connect deeply with caring adults and with peers in a safe, supportive, and inclusive environment. And what we did, we started off 2 days of professional development and planning with an hour and a half of community building. We brought the staff from Richfield, we brought the staff from our community partners together, and we just got to know each other. And we got to know each other so that we could work well together and be the best that we can be for our students in Richfield. And the diversity and the wisdom that Dolores Works program has brought to our summer programming has been invaluable. And we've just been so blessed to have them with us. And Judy's been behind the scenes, making all of those things happen, as well as Dr. Henderson creating this program and bringing them along, all of her community experts along. Again, we've just been amazed, and it's been enriching for all of us as staff members, and we know it's been enriching for our students as well. And we're glad to share this with the community and with all the families in Richfield. So again, thank you for the opportunity to highlight this partnership with Dolores Works.
Judy Henderson, how critical is it to forge and create genuine, workable collaborations for the mission, for the families, for the students? Unmute, please.
It's extremely important. It brings people together in ways that they would never have imagined. This summer, I have seen in these last weeks, children feeling like they belong, I see children feeling like they are respected. And I also see compassion amongst everyone in the building. There is a um, there is a very peaceful and calm atmosphere that has emanated from this experience this year, quite different from last year. But the collaboration that we have received from the district and working with very efficient instructors to teach the children has been invaluable.
Great. One of our regular partners is joining us too, Dr. Irma McClaurin, who's an educator. She's the former president of Shaw University in North Carolina. She was the founding creator of the University of Minnesota's Urban Research and Outreach Project Center in North Minneapolis. Dr. Irma, good to see you. How are you? Jump in as an educator. I think these are critical questions. It's wonderful to have our friends from St. Paul and Richfield demonstrate and reflect collaboration, but from your lens as a university, as a educator in academia, how critical is this work and how impactful can it be, must it be?
Well, I think absolutely. The kind of things that are happening, building the leadership of the youth, all of these are important aspects of growing our communities. I think universities still have a responsibility to do more. I think we're seeing them talking to people across the country who are doing community engagement work. How can universities leverage their resources to support the kind of work that communities are doing, but that it is driven by what the community needs and not necessarily what the university wants? Those are two different things. And I think the more that we can bring those two dimensions together, because the university has the expertise and resources, but they have to be prepared to listen, to the community and really let them take the lead in terms of what kind of research and what kind of support is needed so that they can advance the work that they're doing. Because at the end of the day, the students at universities go back into these communities. They are the citizens. And so whatever can be done to support community endeavors is necessary.
Dr. Yanowski, is there a relationship or an intention, Dr. Henderson, to involve the next level institutions in the work of Dolores Works and in partnership with you in Richfield?
Dr. Yanowski, I just noted to Patala that we should write a proposal and propose it to the University of Minnesota as well as St. Thomas. I do know that St. Thomas University is really doing a lot of work around community, as you well know, Yusef, that they're doing a lot of work with the community and have done so in the past, as well as the University of Minnesota. So that gives us an opportunity, based on what Dr. McClaurin just said, to look at the University of Minnesota, look at Hamline University, as well as St. Thomas, and put our program forth, Dr. Yanowski, to try to bring a partnership and collaboration with them. That's my thought on the collaboration with the higher education.
Particularly, Dr. Henderson, with teacher preparation programs.
Right.
That's the critical link.
And I would suggest that the university put the mechanism in place through UROC, the University Research and Outreach Engagement Center. So Makeda Zulu-Gillespie is the current executive director. I was the founding. September 15th, they're having a community day, and it will be an opportunity to see myself and other previous executive directors. There's only been 3 others before Makeda. And I think what makes Makeda's leadership so significant is that she's probably the only director of a university research center who's not faculty, who doesn't have a PhD, but who is definitely rooted in the community. So the structure for working with creating partnerships with programs like yours has already been set in place. It's just how do you now activate it so that it supports what you're doing in that way? And I would say the more institutions you can bring in, the better. Whether it's private, McAllister is there, you have St. Thomas, you have the community colleges. Let them all put aside their individualism and come together to say, how can we as a collective strategize to support these efforts? That's what's important, is what is the output, as opposed to whether my particular input is more important than yours. And I think that's where universities have work to do, is that they're not real big on collaboration. Everybody likes to do their own thing. And what they don't understand, which is what I found working on UROC and developing it, is that community people would say, we get like 30 requests, the university sends us requests, St. Thomas sends us requests, someone else, and they're like, don't you all talk to each other? Don't you all collaborate? So I think as you go forward with this, you make it clear that you expect these institutions to work collaboratively so that you are not having to speak to like 10 different entities, and that your vision is the driving force of what needs to happen.
Kamau King, brother, good to see you again. Let me bring you into the conversation and shift it a little bit and have another way for our esteemed guests to respond and reflect on what they do, the value of it. It seems sometimes like there's a two trains running situation. On the one hand, we're hearing all of this wonderful and positive work that Dr. Henderson and Dr. Yanowski and the educators are doing, and we hear about the potential. But at the same time, in the community, we're watching the news every day, and the news every day talks about our children being killed and killing each other. They talk about the systemic failure of the institution. Steve, you almost said it, or you did say it in a certain way, that schools have not been good for people of color. And as you were saying that, I'm thinking, schools at one level simply reinforce the second-class status, or certainly reinforce this idea of supremacist entitlement in the social structure, the white culture. And to that degree, while we learn to read and write, what we learned to read and write was information that positioned us subordinate to the value of the society at large, and that is a problem. So Kamau, how do we navigate? Number one, you and I and Brenda, I think we say all the time, are products of an excellent school system. We reflect parents and teachers and schools and neighborhoods that treated us like scholars when we were children, right? And it motivated us and had us believe in ourselves and our right and our responsibility to be of service to our community, to our people. We wonder if that spirit still exists at the same level, or have we simply failed to illuminate that, to have that be the leading story versus the story about the defects, the problems, the disparities that we are inundated with every day. What do you think, Kamau King?
Yeah, what I'm hearing is very encouraging. They say the way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And I believe that engaging with these young people, especially at the second, third, and fourth and fifth grade level, it sets expectations. It shows that people are concerned about them. And I'm very enthused about what I'm hearing Dr. Henderson say. And she's all over, she's all over the place. It's like some soccer, some t-ball, but me as
your school, Howard, you're a Howard graduate, right?
Yeah, Howard Law School graduate. Yeah. But as a coach, I believe that all of the activities that she mentioned, each of them have a way of gaining interest, showing the kids that there are people who are interested in them. So I believe that what you're doing is good. Now, how that impacts the overall society, what they hear on the news, we can't really control that. But what you can control, what she's controlling, is her interaction and the interaction that they're having. And Dr. Unoski is the interaction that they're having at the moment that they're having, and I think that that's good.
Could I jump in here, Al? Because I think, two things I want to say, which is one, when we talk about education, we have to understand that there's been a radical shift in what we believe to be the function of schools. Ultimately, schools are cultural institutions, and their intent is socialization. The period from K through 12 in the United States is the one moment in every person's life in this country where they have a commonality. We don't have it in religion. We don't have it in family structures. We don't have it in where we live, but everybody goes through K through 12. And what has happened is that we've lost sight of education as the primary function of schools. They have become sort of behavior management systems.
Yes.
So they're focused more on testing towards what in we don't know, because we found out tester bias. They don't really tell us, sort of what kids' abilities are. They just meet a kind of standard. So there's all this standardization. So we've lost sight of the idea of education as a learning, emotive experience for children, to allow them to just be. And that has been lost sight of. So teachers, have become kind of behavior management people. We also have to keep in mind, according to the National Center on Education, that 84% of all public school teachers and public charter school teachers are white. 84%. Over 50% of all the students in public schools and public charter schools are kids of color. So we've got a disconnect between the people who are teaching the children, and I'm not saying everyone who's white has a negative, belief around, black and brown children or immigrant children, but they have also been socialized in this culture. It's not their kids. So how much effort they put into it, whether they focus on the behavior versus the learning, really depends on how they see that population of children. And then the other thing is that as we talk about and lament the absence of Black teachers in the school system,
Yes.
we have to understand that was an intentional strategy, that before Brown versus Board of Education was approved by the Supreme Court, the governor of Topeka, Kansas wrote to all of the Black teachers and said to them, if this passes, you lose, because I do not believe that white parents will want you teaching their children. We have to understand that the desegregation, Brown versus Board of Education, was an integration of children, not teachers.
Right.
And so we lost those generations of Black teachers, that had been there before. So we have to sort of always historicize and sort of contextualize what it is we're trying to fix and how it got that way. And we can't just look at the last 5 years. We have to look at the longer history. And then my final point is that the kind of program that you're doing, Dr. Henderson, is so important. In the second grade, I was sent to a special summer school. I was like 8 years old. And it must have been, I guess it was for gifted children, but it was learning about the sea, the environment. I remember writing a play about Charlie the seahorse. I'd never been to the ocean, had never been, I was learning. The teacher who was in there, I remember her name, Miss Reardon. She realized, or I told her I wrote poetry. She gave me 2 little books of lavender paper with blank pages. My mother saved those poetry books. I have them. And what I realized is that she never asked to read them, but she encouraged me. And now as I'm going back through these books, as I'm preparing my papers from my archive, apparently I used to loan the poetry book out to students in the class. So that summer program really had an impact on continuing to support me as, a creative person, as a writer. And then the second program was at 16, I attended the Yale Summer High School. There were 140 students. About 30 of us were women. We were the first women to attend Yale because it was still single sex at that point. But those 6 weeks, doing the great books, reading not only white authors, Antigone, and the Communist Manifesto, and Native Son, and Huckleberry Finn, all those things had a profound impact on me before I went to college. So it doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes good time to have a profound impact on someone's life.
And that's my point. That's the point that I was trying to make, that what Dr. Henderson is doing, she's not trying, I mean, she can't solve the problems of the teacher discrepancy in the number of blacks at this time. But what she's doing will have an impact. The same way that teacher gave you that little book, if she's doing something positive with those children, it will have an impact. And I don't think that a lot of districts are doing what she's doing.
That's true. That's true. That's true. And you being a coach, you will appreciate this. I was out because I'm a certified teacher as well with my students for T-ball. I saw 10 young men in 5th grade playing soccer. And I thought, oh my goodness, there are 10 of them. Organized sport, working, collaborating, talking, laughing. And that goalie was excellent. The difference is they had 3 soccer balls instead of 1. But the goalie was so excellent. There was a black and orange ball, and there were 2 regular soccer balls. He saw those balls coming at him. He kept those soccer balls moving. And finally, I saw one student go over and pat him on the back and said, "You did a great job." But look at the skills: teamwork, being a great sports person, collaborating, organization, all of that, with those 10 diverse students learning how to play the game together, and they'll remember that for life. Correct. I saw another group today when I was out for T-ball doing the same thing, and they were 4th graders organizing soccer. And so I just feel that this is the beginning of them developing and being empowered to know what they can do and having a voice, as well as leveraging the skills that they've been taught this summer, and looking at how they can really look into the future. Who's to say that one of them might not become a professional soccer player?
And even more important is that they see that's where they gain the respect for adults. When people are supervising them, getting compliments makes a big difference to a young 9-year-old. You compliment him on something like that, he may go on and try to really develop that skill. So
Kamau, what was our coach's name? Was it Monroe, Mr. Monroe?
Mr. Monroe, yeah.
What was our team's name? Monroe something.
I believe it was the Bears or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
and don't forget girls in sports, because what often happens,
right?
Is that it's an opportunity for them to become more comfortable with their bodies,
right?
Because we have a lot of body shaming of Black and brown women today. It's an opportunity for them to learn some skills. I played basketball. I was the one who taught my son how to shoot hoops, not his father. And so I think those opportunities are there. And these programs, when I go back to the data we collected for UROC from North Minneapolis, we collected a lot of data about what the community wanted to see in our community affairs meeting. And people wanted safe, creative after-school programs for their children. We have to start thinking about them not as having programs that are tutoring them in math and stuff, but programs that are giving them an opportunity to be creative, to do non-traditional learning, to learn about their own history, and not just replicate what's in the school. Because once they get motivated in that way, they can bring that back into the school.
And by the way, today it was more integrated with girls playing soccer with those boys as well. And when they go to the soccer class, they are integrated and not boys and girls separate. So I was really glad to see those girls out there giving those boys a run for their money with soccer today. And
I coached a young lady when she was 10 years old by the name of Stacy Lovelace.
Okay.
And Stacy went on to play basketball at Purdue and in the WNBA. And I had her when she was 10. She was one of 2 girls on my team. The others were 5. That team went undefeated. So I have a daughter, so I have no problem with girls. I love them, and with women taking leadership roles.
Right.
At our church, the issue was coming up of whether women can now be deacons. No, to me that's a no-brainer.
Right.
Because they're already doing all the work.
Right.
Let me take this minute to talking about soccer to segue to one of the soccer capitals of the world. Our friend and colleague joins us every week, several times a week, from Bahia in Brazil. Maestre Senna is here. And I asked him to jump on again today because today I'm sort of showing for the first time a project that he and I are collaborating on. We had a section of Inside News that we called Afrodescendientes. And when I created that several years ago, the intent was to have a bilingual expression, Spanish and English, and to recognize that African people, those of us here in the U.S., somehow are miseducated to think that we are the center of the universe. And we don't think about our cousins, our fellow travelers, I guess is the word for it, in the Caribbean and in South America. We don't think about the fact that there are more Black people by virtue of the transatlantic slave trade in South America than in North America.
10 times as many.
Huge. And so somehow we've got to break out of that siloed understanding of who we are and how we have become what we are and rediscover our connectedness. Maestre Senna is assisting, working with me in doing that. Yoji Senna, good afternoon, brother. Good to see you again.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you again, Al.
Greetings, and you're joining us from Bahia.
Yes.
So let me show this first, and then we'll take a minute, because I wanted to ask you, Steve, about the demographics. You said 80% of the students in Richfield are students of color, and my suspicion is a substantial number of those are students who speak Spanish and maybe other languages as well, perhaps Somali. What we're working on together is the relaunch of this project, Afrodescendientes. And Afrodescendientes is a page to begin with. It should expand into an independent publication in time, particularly a digital publication, giving us access to audiences around the planet. But here in this edition, we present an article written by a colleague, a diplomat who is from Venezuela, who's presently in Colombia. And he's writing about the elections that happened recently in Colombia, the elections that led to Colombia's first African vice president, who is pictured here, Francia Marquez, with her presidential candidate, Gustavo Petro. And so Jesus Chucho Garcia, our writer and colleague, wrote this piece in Spanish called Afrocolombianos Reconstruir la Esperanza, Afro-Colombians Rebuilding Hope. I translated that into English, and you see that next to it, but I reached out to Brother Senna, and he translated the same text into Portuguese. So here we have a story being presented in the neighborhood newspaper Inside News, but has a reach greater than the neighborhood because it also is digital and therefore has a chance to reach people that speak Spanish and people that speak English and people that speak Portuguese throughout the Americas and perhaps even into Africa, Angola, several more countries. And Yoji and I talked about this and said, you know what, we need to also, when we started this, figure out how to have this conversation in Yoruba, in French,
Yeah.
and perhaps in Somali as well. And what if we were able to present these texts, these stories simultaneously in these languages, not only for the value of the story, but for the value of the idea. The idea is to recognize, to see, and appreciate, and know that we have equity ownership mechanisms for storytelling, for sharing, for describing the universe. So I wanted to thank you again, Brother Yoji Maestre Sena, for helping me both shape the idea and produce the product and share this with you. And in that regard, Steve, what were your thoughts about how you find the challenge and the need to integrate or to create community among people with different languages in your demographic at Richfield School?
Yeah, this is amazing, and that newspaper is amazing. We have over 40% of our students speaking Spanish, and almost 10% of them speaking Somali in their home. So almost half of our families are speaking a second language.
Wow.
And then the other thing I wanted to say is I'm thinking about the comments of Dr. McClaurin and Dr. Henderson. They're talking about enrichment opportunities and expansion opportunities for our kids. And it brings me to one of the things that we often do with kids of color is remediate rather than expand and enrich. And so one of the great things about Dolores Works and the examples given by Dr. McClaurin is those enrichments and those expansions touch kids for the rest of their lives. And those are the things that the communities are asking for. No community is asking for remediation. They're asking for expansion and extra opportunities. And that is the great thing about this Dolores Works partnership.
And I would suggest, Steve, it sounds like you all are doing great work, is that we also look back to the past. There were programs that came out of the poverty programs in the 1960s and 70s, Upward Bound, ABC. There were lots of programs that actually worked. They didn't continue forward, not because they weren't successful, but because the country was no longer interested in investing. If we weren't burning down cities, then suddenly the interest in trying to placate Black and brown communities kind of waned. But there are all kinds of programs. There were counterparts to that in the Latino community. And I think we need to go back and look at those models because they did actually work. There are whole generations, of folks who came through that. I'm an Upward Bound program person. I certainly was the interim director of the University of Massachusetts' Minority Support Program for Black and other minority students. So I've been engaged in this work most of my life. And I think instead of us keep trying to find new ways of doing things, we need to go back and look at models that actually were quite successful and just replicate them and update them to fit the current moment.
Let me ask Yoji Sena to weigh in here. We're almost out of time, but I wanted to make sure I had a chance to welcome you and to have you weigh in on the conversation. You are experiencing the culture because you lived here in Twin Cities for 30 years and you recently moved back to your home, Brazil. As you consider this conversation, what ideas come to your mind? What concerns?
Well, I worked for many years in the school system as after school teacher, and as well I've been a parent of 6 kids in the school system in Minneapolis. So I do have I have an opinion. And I agree a little bit. One thing that struck me and I was nodding my head when I heard was about the segregation. The desegregation was about the students, not the teachers. So the big proportion of white teachers, it does. I think it's one of the great contributor factors for it, because coincidentally, it's kind of the same sometimes proportion about the police departments that in relationship to the population of the areas, where the majority of the police departments are white. The majority of teachers and people in position of authority in schools, at least in Minneapolis, are white, overwhelmingly white, and they are very distanced and detached of the cultural realities of the students. Myself, as after school teacher, many times I felt pretty much this this detachment, and sometimes I would say I felt more than a after school teacher that I would bring something of value of my culture to the students, but I felt to be like a babysitter, right? There was these expectations of what this cultural diversity that I would bring because of my background, but never was enough support or in relationship one of paying rate, materials, and overall integration with the rest of the school. So always this very distance stuff, and I felt pretty much there was kind of fulfilling budget needs or statistics to present that they did stuff in the end of the program, and never those programs were at at a long term basis or medium long term. Was always into emergential into the moment. So um yeah, and as a parent,
Well,
the same, you know,
listen,
by being the majority of the teachers and management to be of Caucasian origin, they have already preconceptions about my kid. Every time I went to PTA's conferences, was like that. They have a presumption about what was going on, and
let
was
me let
very
me let me
formulaic.
we're going to be
You
out
know,
of time in about 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Thank you for the comments, the observations, Mestre Sena. But I wanted to close with Dr. Henderson and Dr. Yanowski responding. This has been a wonderful conversation. First of all, thank you, everybody, for your voice, your presence. But how do you, in closing, Steve, then Dr. Henderson, lay out a call to the community to be responsive to those critical things brought up as a parent by Mestre Sena, and to the other things you've talked about as educators and leaders in community? See first, and then we'll close with you, Dr. Henderson.
Okay.
Dr. Henderson is with us because she is spectacular, and so is Dolores Works. I would say to Maestre Sena, this is not an emergency. This is not a short-term investment. We have a long-term partnership, and Dr. Henderson will be back again and again, and she will be thoroughly funded. And so when the other folks try to steal Dolores Works from the children and families of Richfield, we value you. We want you, and please stay with us as others find out and expand into what you're providing, because it's wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Henderson.
Thank you, Dr. Yanowski. And I feel the same way, as well as the parents. As parents pick up their children at the end of the day, I make sure I go either to the door or to their cars to let them know how excited we are to be with their children, and let them know something about what their child has experienced for the day, and give feedback about how wonderful their children are, or how bright their child has exhibited their potential. I think that's forming relationships with the community, and especially with the parents. I'm big on parent involvement, as Yusef and Mgeni well knows. And I think bringing that part in for Dolores Works, as well as this excellent staff in Richfield, I think it has brought to their attention that we're all colleagues, we're all in it together, in making a difference in the lives of our children and looking into the future. And I feel very strongly that with me, with Dolores Works and the staff and the community experts and the certified staff and retired educators that I have brought to this community will make a difference. We will be collaborating, Dr. McClaurin, with the universities, and I'm going to reach out to you for more information because I think Richfield has really set the pace for the state of Minnesota as to what we can do with our children in closing the achievement gap and giving them opportunities so they can look into their own future in closing the wealth gap and dealing with economic sustainability. I can't thank Dr. Yanofsky and his staff and his community as well as the parents. The parents are excited, and one parent said, we're challenging the students. And one parent said to me, my child came home and said, I've learned a lot about tomatoes. And there are many tomato plants, and I want you to understand all the tomato plants that are out there. So stop picking one tomato when you go into the market, supermarket, or the store. Find other tomatoes so we can. So that's Mr. Page, an African American with the University of Minnesota Extension program in gardening. What he has brought, and this child was a second grader, not a fourth grader, but a second grader. What a lesson that she's even teaching her mother about nutrition and about plants, and especially about vegetables. So I could give you many, many examples in talking with parents. And this is a phenomenal program with Richfield. I can't say enough, and I hope that our community will begin to look at what we can do with our youth, especially our middle school.
We're out of time. We're out of time. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thanks to you, and thanks to all of the other guests, to my companions for your being here. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Thank you all.
Okay, thank
Take
you.
care. Stay safe.
It worked out.